June 22, 1941. German troops, who have conquered the Western European continent. Suddenly, an attack on the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union gave up negotiations with Britain and France before, signed a non-aggression treaty with Germany. During this treaty, Hitler avoided two-front battle, so he can let go of his hands and feet, attacking Poland as planned. So World War II was signed in the Soviet-German treaty. It broke out in a week. Unexpectedly, Hitler just didn't talk about martial ethics. Tear the treaty. Start attacking the Soviet Union. The Soviet army suffered heavy losses in the early stages of the war. The war started only 6 days. The German army occupied Minsk. 3 weeks into the war, nearly 30 divisions in the Soviet Union no longer exist. About 70 divisions lost more than 50% of their personnel. 3,500 planes are gone. More than half of the warehouses were blown up. The serious defeat of the Soviet army was far beyond Stalin's expectations. Facing great pressure, don't look at the back. Stalin has an iron will. The first day when the war begins, he only drank 1 cup of tea a day. Nothing to eat. Molotov is still the one who is depressed. On behalf of Stalin, he delivered a national radio speech. Announce war with Germany. Call on the people of the whole country to unite and fight against fascism. The Supreme Commander works 16 to 18 hours a day, until the 12th day after the war began. It's almost 2 weeks. People heard Stalin's voice for the first time. Stalin delivered a very appealing speech through the radio. He called on the Red Army. Fight to the last drop of blood to defend the motherland. Everyone's confidence. It immediately strengthened the spirit. Encourage everyone. Respond to Stalin's call. Join various military and militia organizations. Even women rushed to the factory. Railways provide support for the front line. But Hitler's advantage is very obvious. The road to Lower Moscow was opened on May 8th. Leningrad and the outside world were cut off at the end of August. In October, the German army concentrated its superior forces and wanted to defeat Moscow in one fell swoop. In order to capture Moscow, Hitler assembled millions of people. The head of state even said directly that he would destroy the Soviet Union before winter came. The situation in Moscow is very critical. The German army broke through to a place only 25 kilometers away from Moscow. At this time, more than 2 million people evacuated Moscow urgently. Even the general staff has been withdrawn. The Ministry of Internal Affairs has prepared special planes for retreat for Stalin. But after thinking about the strong psychological struggle, Stalin, at this historical juncture, he decided to stay in Moscow. Even if he is the only one left, Stalin believes, although the Soviet army lost in the early stage, the losses are also heavy. But what is the most important? You can't lose confidence. As long as faith is not destroyed, victory will come one day. As long as the people and the army know that Stalin is still in Moscow, then they will increase confidence. This spirit and fighting spirit of the Supreme Commander in the face of danger. This Moscow defense battle, it was carried out under the direct leadership of Stalin. General Zhukov served as commander of the Western Front in Moscow. During the days of fighting, Stalin couldn't live without the office for several days. On November 7th, this day is the October Revolution Festival. The Soviet Union held celebrations on this day every year. And this day, fascism is under Moscow. Just about to swallow Moscow. The Soviet Union is about to destroy its country. All the courtyards of the general staff were bombed. Everyone thinks there is still a celebration now. What military parade? But Stalin is determined to sue him. Not only do it, the military parade must be made into a documentary and broadcast it nationwide. On that day, Red Square in Moscow. As usual, the Soviet military and civilians held a military parade. This shows their contempt for the fascist German invaders. And that fearless spirit. Thousands of fully armed Soviet soldiers, with neat and vigorous steps, walked past Lenin's tomb on Red Square. Stalin stood on Lenin's tomb to inspect the troops. A very inspiring speech. These lines are also very classic. Stalin called on everyone in a very inspiring language. Fight for the politicians. Fight for the nation. Fight for the country. This time the military parade was held on Red Square. Very bold. Very visionary. A military parade that demonstrated his superb leadership art very much. Especially in the early stages of the Soviet war. Many people have little confidence in victory. Such a massive Red Square parade greatly increased everyone's confidence. inspired the patriotic enthusiasm of the broad masses of people. The inspected troops directly carry guns and live ammunition, from Red Square to the front line, fighting the fascism. Even German newspapers at that time said, "The spirit of Russian soldiers looking at death. It has surpassed the German army." They made a full resistance to Germany's lightning offensive. At this time, that year came a long time ago. Extremely cold winter, and came half a month in advance. The Germans are not prepared. It's so cold. Guns failed. This bear's habit is to drink vodka in winter. Can you jump into ice water and swim? The Soviet army began to counterattack after preparation. Stalin decisively put a large number of reserve teams into the battle. The German army, who had not yet established a firm foothold, was caught off guard. By April of the second year, the Soviet army won the Battle of Moscow. The German army was driven back hundreds of kilometers, lost 500,000 people. Hitler suffered from him too. The most painful loss since World War II. Break his invincible myth. This also marked the beginning of the German blitzkrieg bankruptcy. In the whole politics, it has very important spiritual significance. Stalin actually didn't bring many soldiers in the past. How many armed struggles have you been engaged in? But in the anti-fascist war, Stalin became a military strategist step by step. Stalin is very good at learning. During the war, he also often takes time to learn military theory. That is gradually in the training of blood and fire in war. Learn to fight a modern war. Finally become a relatively mature military strategist. Especially after the Battle of Stalingrad. When deciding on a major battle, Stalin never made any major mistakes again. It should be said that he had mastered it at that time. An art of commanding modern warfare. Command a Red Army to start a victorious counterattack. After the victory of the Moscow defense, the German army is advancing towards Stalingrad. This layer is named after Comrade Stalin. That has a very strong symbolic meaning. So the Soviet Defense Commission issued an order that he would not give in. This tough battle begins. This tough battle. Each stage is carried out under the direct command of Stalin, and it is implemented by famous coaches Zhukov and Wasilewski. Stalin adopted Zhukov's suggestion, defending Stalingrad. It is divided into two stages of defense and offense to advance. First of all, resist. Consumption of a wave of German troops. Counterattack after maturity. There were more than 1 million Soviet troops gathered in Stalingrad at that time. The German army's strength is similar. Both aircraft and artillery are slightly lower than those of the Soviet Union. After all, the Soviet Union is alive. Let's fight here. Have taken out all the money. The one who performed this mission is Southwest Soviet Front and Don River Front. Marshal Wasiliev is in charge of the general coordination and command of the operations. The German army fought in Stalingrad for 2 months. Exhausted, lost soldiers and generals. They can't win this heroic city. In this war of attrition, the morale of the German army is getting lower and lower, losing fighting spirit today, and the weather is getting colder and colder. On February 2nd, 1943, the desperate German Marshal Paulus finally doesn't want to fight. Surrendered. Because it's too cold. Really can't stand it. The Battle of Stalingrad, which lasted more than 200 days. It ended with a victory of the Soviet side. Germany has injured up to 1.5 million soldiers. It accounts for 1/4 of his total strength in the Soviet-German battlefield. This battle was the turning point of the Soviet Patriotic War. It was also the turning point of World War II. It is also a very powerful stroke in the history of human war. After this defeat, in the early morning of July 4th, 1943, Hitler released another attack codenamed Fortress. The Battle of Kursk has started. The German army dispatched 900,000 troops. The Soviet army had 1.3 million people on the battlefield. And this battle has been in history. The biggest tank battle. The supervisor dispatched 3,600 tanks. German troops dispatched 2,700 tanks. On that vast plain, Soviet T-34 tanks and German Tiger tanks play tank battle together. After a month of hard battles, the Soviet army entered a counterattack. The last 50 days of the Battle of Kursk. The victory of the Soviet army ends. German army lost 500,000 troops, more than 1,500 tanks, more than 3,000 cannons. It was also a decisive battle in the Soviet Union's patriotic war. The strategic initiative of the war. It has been completely handed over to the Soviet army. The Soviet Union has been resisting before. Then what about this song? The Soviet army is on the front line that lasts more than 2,000 kilometers. A large-scale counterattack began. It was not until 1944 that the entire Soviet Union was liberated. In order to invade Germany earlier than the US and British troops, Enter Berlin. Stalin only took 2 weeks. The preparations for the Berlin battle were completed. The Supreme Command of the Soviet Union mobilized 3 fronts. The total force reached 2.5 million, equipped with more than 40,000 cannons, more than 6,000 tanks, more than 7,000 fighter jets. 6 assaults were carried out simultaneously on the 300 kilometers front. Then Hitler could not surrender immediately. He made an appointment to defend Berlin until the last person's order. 3 solid lines of defense were established east of Berlin. But the Soviet army at this time, it's already completely full of morale. Everyone is very eager to defeat the fascism completely. April 16, 1945, Zhukov issued an order to attack Berlin. The Battle of Berlin begins. Despite encountering the German army's desperate resistance, the Soviet army, still on April 19th, break through the defense of the suburbs of Berlin. 3 days later, I entered Berlin city. 4 days later, the U.S. and Soviet troops met in Berlin. On April 30th, brave Soviet soldiers just put the bright red flag on the dome of the German parliament. At this time, Hitler committed suicide at his will without a chance. May 2nd, the Red Army conquered Berlin. German fascists finally put down their weapons. Stop resisting. The Battle of Berlin ends. Germany's unconditional surrender sign. Zhukov presided over the ceremony. Did Hitler commit suicide? His main assistant, Marshal Kettle, signed an unconditional surrender letter on behalf of Germany. Then look back at the entire war. Stalin didn't say it. Leaders posture to join the battle. He has put aside that ideology. Take a nationalist, a patriot's identity to defend the sacred Russia. Stalin as the supreme commander of the Soviet Union. He knows the tradition of Russian combat, combined with praise of the achievements of the people's heroes. This inspired everyone. Strong patriotism and national consciousness. The combat effectiveness has been greatly improved. At the beginning of the war, one thing Stalin did. It's in his Kremlin office. 2 people's portraits. One is Suvorov. One is Kutuzov. These 2 are famous generals in the history of the Russian Empire. For those who have made great contributions, Stalin can also give rewards in time. Victory in the Battle of Moscow. More than 36,000 people have won various medals and medals. After the Battle of Stalingrad, restored the officers' epaulet system, and the uniform is more handsome. The pride of soldiers has also been enhanced. On August 8, 1945, the Soviet Far East Army under the leadership of Wasilewski, an attack on the Japanese Guandong Army in northeast China. The Guandong Army was defeated. Japan finally signed the surrender letter. After 4 years of hard fighting, winning the anti-fascist victory. Although the Soviet Union suffered extremely tragic losses, Stalin, as the leader, as commander, that strong will, indomitable spirit and leadership, it also quickly reversed the chaos caused by the early stages of the war. So after World War II, Stalin's personal prestige has been further improved. But do you think Stalin performed perfectly in World War II? That must be not. Stalin also made some very serious mistakes in the early stage. For example, despite the Soviet-German treaty, Stalin didn't believe that Hitler would abide by this treaty. When proposing a combat plan, when the general staff correctly estimated the direction of the German army's main attack, Stalin rejected it. He believes Hitler should have the first choice of Ukraine and Donetsk river basins, because there are rich products there. Food, coal, oil is especially suitable for plundering. But under the Soviet system, it is known, military generals, no one has the courage to convince Stalin. Revise the combat plan on Stalin's opinion. Deploy the heavy troops in the southwest direction. 58 divisions were deployed directly there. As a result, the German army was heading towards the Soviet attack. He headed straight to Moscow. Due to the lack of military strength in this direction of the Soviet Union, had to temporarily dispatch troops to the southwest. The army is fighting while advancing. The combat power has been greatly reduced. Zhukov also wrote it in his secret diary. Explain, Stalin defeated the first phase of the war, a surprise attack classified as Fascist Germany. Actually, this is developing for Stalin. This is all covering up Stalin's miscalculation in defense. As early as June 1940, after France's defeat, Germany began to make plans to invade the Soviet Union. The plan is replaced by Barbarossa. Why is it called Barbarossa? Because this is the nickname of the German Emperor Frederick I, the red-bearded one. His purpose is to eliminate Russia's vitality. The Soviet spies also sent a large amount of intelligence back to the central government, and they have already mastered the German attack. The Soviet Union's assault direction and attack date are Soviet military officers in Berlin. Even the war start date is accurately stated. But Stalin just didn't take all this seriously. He felt that he was right. These are fake information. Not only the Soviet intelligence officers watched the German army, even those anti-fascist warriors in the West. These intelligences are also used as smoke bombs. Stalin believes that the Soviet Union is not ready for war. He was very subjectively hoping that the battle would start a fight later. In addition, Stalin's personality is already quite suspicious. There are countless traitors on both sides, so he didn't believe it in the end. Some generals requested to enter the state of combat readiness. Stalin always stressed not to provoke Hitler. Don't be separated from others. He is actually anesthesia. 8 days before the German raid on the Soviet Union, the Soviet TASS also issued a statement. Say Germany is the same as the Soviet Union. It will also seriously abide by the Soviet-German non-aggression treaty. This statement, no positive answer from Germany, but the millions of Soviet soldiers and civilians have been paralyzed. You want the authoritative body of the country. The authoritative mouthpiece expresses this. What does that mean? That means that the senior management will definitely know in the future. Something they don't know. Otherwise, how could he be so calm? So sure. Then everyone will relax a little bit. So when Germany could attack the Soviet Union at any time, Stalin made such a fatal mistake. Didn't make up your mind to enter the state of combat readiness. So in the first 12 days of the war, the Soviet army lost 600,000 people. It's a very bad start. Everyone was very conscious of Stalin. No one doubts Stalin's decision-making ability. I didn't expect that at the beginning. These were all self-deceptions. Moreover, Stalin also made mistakes in military theory and command. In the early days, Stalin only emphasized attack. He did not allow the Soviet Union to study any defense issues. The deployment of the former Soviet Union was also mainly for attacking. Focus the army in border areas. No in-depth deployment. As a result, the entire German armor division is very mobile. Have a roundabout way. It's time to call in. Then when Hitler himself is at a clear disadvantage, Stalin still demands troops attack instead of a planned retreat. Avoid the enemy's edge. This will greatly lose your own vitality. This is Stalin's tactic. Emphasize offense. It is directly related to the tactics of not talking about defense. I have to mention this example of the Battle of Kiev. German troops advance from the north and south wings of Kiev. Will swallow Kiev at any time. Zhukov strongly demands a retreat. Stalin just disagrees. And Zhukov was removed from office. Then continue like this. Kiev must not be able to hold on. At that time, all the military leaders agreed to withdraw quickly. Basically not. Another line of defense. Otherwise, it will not only be realized by Kiev. The Southwest Soviet front will also be wiped out. But Stalin is the only one who is very stubborn. Opposed giving up Kiev. He also issued orders to surrender and escape people to shoot on the spot. The troops must fight to the end. Advised Stalin to give up his stepfather. As a result, Stalin scolded them back. No way. The Southwest front had to defend. Finally, Kiev fell. The Soviet army suffered serious losses. For armies were surrounded by more than 450,000 people. More than 60,000 officers were captured or sacrificed. All staff officers of the Southwest Front were killed. The commander of the front army was killed. The root cause. Stalin is alone there. Of course, then again, one aspect of Kiev's tenacious resistance. It also relieves the pressure in Moscow. Then later the Crimean front went to liberate the entire Crimea, although the Soviet Union has the upper hand in personnel. However, due to Stalin's command error, the Soviet army suffered a crushing defeat. More than 17 million people were lost. Tank, cannons, and planes are numerous. At the same time, Stalin also decided to launch an attack on the southern line. As a result, they got into the German army's pocket again. The entire 57th Army was destroyed. So it means that during the first half of the Patriotic War, Stalin has not yet shown the great talent of a commander. The personnel losses ratio between the Soviet Union and Germany was 3.2 to 1. The Soviet Union is definitely losing more. That's because of the Nazi atrocities. Slavs were attacked. Jews and other ethnic extermination policies are related to. But it also has tactical problems with the Soviet Union itself. And Stalin emphasizes that kind of policy of not being afraid of sacrifice. It has to do with his own constant cleaning. We often win the Soviet Patriotic War. It is Stalin's biggest attack. Of course, it's not wrong. He uses his will and his outstanding command afterwards. Talent plays a vital role in the entire war. He actually made a lot of mistakes. These mistakes are worth reflecting on. Besides the mistakes made in the war, Stalin was doing a big deal in the army before the war. The great cleanup we've talked about before. The Soviet army also lost a large number of excellent commanders. A disaster for the Soviet army's defeat. All the leaders of the army are dead. The new leaders didn't have enough combat experience. And what about the victory of this great patriotic war? In fact, It is Stalin's only indulgence voucher.